Hi, and welcome to Federal Appraisal LLC's educational video series. In this video, we will be explaining the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice. They're also known as USPAP, the rules and regulations that go along with professional appraisal practice, which has two main parts, rules and standards. Specifically in this video, we present USPAP rules. We present USPAP standards in a separate video. The purpose of USPAP is to ensure the reliability and the credibility of appraisals for the public. There are 5 rules. They form the conceptual basis of USPAP. Rule 1. The ethics rule sets forth the requirements for integrity, impartiality, objectivity, judgment, and ethical conduct. All appraisals must be objective and unbiased, carefully completed, provided confidentially, and properly certified as such. This rule is the core of professional appraisal practice. If an appraisal serves to advocate for a client, then it is not good appraisal practice. Instead, it would be an advocacy or fiduciary service. While advocacy and fiduciary services are fully appropriate and legal in some circumstances, such as legal representation or brokerage services, appraisers must never advocate for a client or a cause. Appraiser ethical responsibilities are similar to auditing accountants and judges, where impartiality and objectivity are paramount. Rule 2. The record-keeping rule establishes the work file requirements for appraisals. Appraisers must create and maintain a work file. This file must be available for audit and review by various appraiser oversight entities. A work file must contain the appraisal report as well as the documentation necessary to support the appraiser's analyses and conclusions, and the details on the scope of work. The details in the work file must be sufficient to construct at least a summarized appraisal report, whether or not the client wants such an appraisal report format. Without record keeping, no appraisal regulation would have teeth. The records kept are necessary for peer and legal review, to confirm that the appraisal is completed professionally and according to standards. This record-keeping requirement effectively sets the minimum cost to produce an appraisal. Even the simplest report format delivered to the client does not diminish the requirements of the work file that the appraiser must complete and maintain. Rule 3. The competency rule sets minimum conditions for the appraiser's knowledge and experience. An appraiser must be qualified for a specific property type, for the market area and industry, if applicable, and for the purpose and use for the appraisal. For example, an expert urban office building appraiser for financing purposes may not be qualified to appraise a suburban residence for condemnation. Appraisers may join with other appraisers and professionals to gather the competency to complete an appraisal. Such limited competency must be disclosed. Rule 4. The scope of work rule sets obligations related to the appraisal problem, identification, research, analyses, and reporting. Each appraisal must be tailored appropriately to fit the circumstances. It is entirely the appraiser's responsibility to determine the scope of work required to satisfy the client's needs. The scope of work relates to the type and depth of both the research and analysis and the reporting. In other words, the client's purpose and use drives the scope of work. The same property, even as of the same appraisal date, might have different appraisal scopes of work if the two clients have different purposes and uses. For example, the scope of work for an appraisal of an apartment building for federal income tax purposes will be different than the appraisal of the same apartment building for local property tax assessment purposes. In each case, both the analysis and the reporting will be substantially different. USPAP does not prescribe any specific appraisal research requirement, analysis, technique, methodology, or approach. Rather, it wisely only mandates that a qualified appraiser must do what their peers in training and experience will do in the same circumstances given the same appraisal situation and the same appraisal purpose and use. The importance of this distinction cannot be understated. The acceptable reporting options range from form reports, summary narrative reports, to extensive narrative reports. None may be less than the scope of work required for the client's needs. Rule 5. Finally, the jurisdictional exception rule preserves the balance of USPAP if a portion is contrary to law or to public policy in a particular jurisdiction. There are rare occasions when laws prescribe different courses of action than USPAP. If the exception is properly identified and reported in the appraisal, the appraiser may depart from USPAP by claiming the jurisdictional exception. In short, while USPAP does not prescribe any specific appraisal analysis or technique within its 5 rules, it establishes standards for mandating clarity, transparency, competency, and objectivity. Appraisal would not be a science if, like other sciences, appraisal was not conducted in an unbiased and verifiable fashion, and appraisal did not contribute to greater understanding. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to continue learning about the appraisal process. Click the video on your screen to learn about the USPAP standards.